Welcome to Dress for Success, Going Places Network Retail Roadmaps event. My name's Angela Williams. I'm from Dress for Success.
I'm Candice Ward from Macys.
I'm Annie Garniva from the New York City Employment Training Coalition, speaking at GCU New York about career paths in the fashion industry.
We are going to share some enlightenment on how to utilize some of your soft skills and representing yourself in the community, in the retail community, to further your job, to further your skills.
If you've ever heard of Dress for Success, you probably think that we primarily serve women and provide them with professional attire. Well, that is true, but that was true about 18 years ago. Today, we are really known essentially as suiting a woman from the inside out. And one thing about Dress for Success is that we are very much adamant about strong partnerships and strong collaborations. And that's what we're doing today. The only way that we can impact change for the common good is by doing so together. So without further ado, I'd like to move along this magnanimous panel and kick it off to Frank Zambelli, the chairman of Accessories Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. So tonight, the goal is really to initiate the series and understand the retail roadmap, as we call it. And that is, said in short, the way in and the way up, avoiding plateauing, understanding the needs, both as somebody outside looking in and somebody on the inside understanding the needs and the changing needs of the employment landscape. But I think it would be best if we start by allowing you to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your organizations and what it is that you do for them. So, Candice.
Sure. So again, my name is Candice Ward, and I am the stylist director for My Stylist at Macys. Many of you may have known that it was formerly called Macys by Appointment, and I lead a team of individuals, really stellar salespeople within the Macys organization, and their focus is to guide their clients and their customers to get into wardrobes, get into looks that really suit who they are and to bring out their personality and their creativity and their style. In addition, I partner with a lot of individuals within the Macys organization to continue to help foster the growth of the Macys brand.
I'm Annie Garniva. I work for the New York City Employment Training Coalition. What we do is exactly collaboration and partnership. We are an association of about 150 organizations like Dress for Success that help individuals mostly from either a low-income background or any kind of points of challenges throughout entering the workforce. They really try and raise up the New York City's economy, collectively working with about 800,000 individuals. We work on an advocacy front as well as educational and networking front to bring about a broader system change that really allows New Yorkers to tap into this great city economy, as well as help employers be able to have the strongest kind of workforce that they could possibly have. So we are an intermediary and a hub that really helps people connect to one another and rise up from the bottom up.
Great. So Annie, we're going to start with you. The ETC does a lot of roundtables, a lot of discussions, really sort of probing the issues at hand. And as you think about the entryways into the first level of employment, sort of the way in, before we talk about the way up, what are the obstacles or some of the larger hurdles that this constituency needs to some help getting over, and have they changed as the economy has changed?
Sure. Well, retail is one of the two of the fastest growing sectors in the city. Out of the recession, hospitality and accommodation were the two sectors that really continue to be growing. So that means there's a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of challenges because there's a lot of competition to enter it. So oftentimes I find that it's an issue of culture. People don't necessarily understand. That's what we hear a lot from employers is we need people that have passion and attitude and really understand the culture of our company. But the question is, how do you understand that culture without being in it? It's kind of a catch-22. You also have to figure out, with a more technical world and more applications being online, how do you figure out what are the words and how to present yourself, and then once you get into the interview process, how to really tell the story about yourself that connects to that company and reflects that company. So we work with organizations, or rather, the organizations really do the work, working with employers to help individuals enter in that capacity.
So it literally starts with the front gate, the application process.
How to break down, when you're looking at a set of skills and qualifications, how do you reflect what being a good communicator is? How do you reflect that you understand the culture of a company? How do you reflect beyond the technical skills? How are the fundamental soft skills that you have? How do they connect to the story that you're trying to tell about yourself and that the company is seeking for you?
I love that she said the word story, and I reflect back to when I was entering into Macys and when I was interviewing with a higher level executive for this position, and I'm describing my skills, and she looked at me and she says, okay, well, tell me a story. Tell me a story about how does that relate back to your skills, and kind of convince me that that's your expertise. And so I love that she says that storytelling word, because I think it's really important. We're constantly telling a story about ourselves. And I think as we continue to get better at articulating that, I think that will continue to help us progress into other areas.
Great. So Candice, let's talk about some of the pathways in. I think we probably all intuitively, and maybe because many of us in the room have done it, know that sales associate on the floor at Macys is maybe one of the largest front gates, if we want to consider it that way. So tell us why sort of the variety or the multiple pathways that could lead to, and then are there others maybe that are less obvious besides retail sales associate within the industry, within the sector, that might be a point of entry as well?
I love the entry level of a sales associate, because at the core of any retail organization, it's about selling to a customer, about selling to a client. So that's how you make your money. And so coming in at that entry level and really understanding the customer is super key, and it can leverage yourself into a variety of areas within the retail industry. And it could be from, gosh, you know what, I'm really good at getting merchandise out on the floor and getting markdowns done. So maybe I need to go into an operations side of things. Or maybe I'm really good at giving stellar customer service. I might not be good at doing sales, but maybe I'm really good at giving stellar customer service. So maybe I need to leverage myself to the customer service end. It could be where you are a mentor as a sales associate to some other individuals, and your leader finds out that, gosh, you would be a really good manager one day. And maybe that leads to a selling manager, which could lead to leading a team of selling managers across a region. So aside from, say, being a buyer or a planner or a visual merchandise manager, there are several different avenues that you could lead into with honing into your skill set. And I think it's key that one of the things that's really important is that you communicate to your leaders and to your HR managers and to the people around you your passion, so that they can help guide you into those paths.
There's also something to be said about kind of the flip of that I've been learning that you're expected to have about 6 careers throughout your lifetime, which is quite different from the way it used to be 10, 20, or 30 years ago, where you would enter a career and you would expect to stay within that for the rest of your lifetime. So that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for individuals that are curious and flexible, and just changes the idea of work from a survivability mode to a really exploring yourself mode. And there's a lot more interest from employer side to figure out what are the skills that people gain in one career that make them now be more innovative in a position within retail or any other industry. We're becoming a lot more connected. I don't want to use, not necessarily due to a globalized perspective, but just walls are breaking down in what is interesting in one field and how it could be applied in a different field. So there's certainly, I think, a lot of movement within that enables people coming with one set of skills to be able to enter that pathway.
What are you seeing on the entry-level employment front in terms of a change in expectations on skill set? Are there things that perhaps, let's say I'm a woman who's been unemployed or underemployed for what might feel like an abyss or a canyon in economic years. Now I'm getting back into the workforce. What are some of the skill sets that maybe I didn't need, that I need to at least have a grounding or an understanding in today?
they're harder to measure ones. Things like if you're out of the workforce for a couple of years, it becomes an issue of confidence. Or slightly older individuals tend to go forward with, I know I'm older, but, and it's rather flipping it into a positive and saying, I have all this experience and capacity that's outside of the workforce, and here's how it can be applied.
Leveraging the life
Again, the
experience.
storytelling. It's just learning how to turn something that might be deemed negative in one capacity and flipping it around and saying, well, actually, here's how it's great. We've all been primed to notch ourselves down, and there's something really powerful to just talking about yourself in a blunt, honest, and positive manner. And I think that cuts across every single sector. It has nothing to do with retail. I've seen it in so many different capacities. It's especially blunted in individuals that come from disadvantaged communities or have difficult economic backgrounds. Building the woman from the inside is mostly building the woman's confidence and perspective about herself. And then you can really layer on the technical skills.
Practical skill set,
Yeah.
great. In sort of brass tacks on the Macys floor, what's changed? What does an entry-level sales associate face today or need to really sort of imbue her experience with that she didn't have to
I
in the
think
past?
technology plays a huge part nowadays, and I think most of us utilize technology quite extensively. Smartphones, iPads, iPods, that kind of thing, the computer. And I think at the core of it all is that the sales associate needs to understand that the customer is doing their homework before they come into the store. And they're utilizing all of these tools that at their disposal to do that. And so when they walk into the door, they already kind of know exactly what they want or what they're looking for. And so our sales associates need to be completely abreast from the outside and utilizing that technology so that they are able to assist them to the best of their ability. I can't tell you how many times a customer will walk up with a cell phone and say, find me this, right? Because they're doing this, on their commute in. And so really utilizing the technology, our POS system, the registers, are advancing quickly. And so being able to navigate through those things, I think is very much changed, from a few years back where it was just ringing the register. So many other applications that are on our computer systems to service the customer. So kind of really having a grasp knowledge of technology, I think, is key.
What are the things that typically block somebody from rising up? What creates that plateau most often, and what should we be looking at in terms of creating programming to avoid that or get over those hurdles?
Well, I think one of the biggest thing is communication, and I think the simple aspect of sitting down with your leaders or your HR representative and having a conversation and saying, hey, this is what I'm good at, this is what I like, and kind of having that open dialogue to how can I navigate myself into an area where I would be really successful with and growing with the company. So I think sometimes we need to open up the doors a little bit more and have people kind of come in and sit down and say, let's do a temperature check. How are things going? Where can I help you succeed and grow further? I have a couple of people who I've been fortunate enough to lead and mentor, and literally their progression has been based off of an open and honest dialogue conversation about, what is it that you enjoy? What do you like? And how can I get you to that next level?
So we've talked about skill sets. We've talked about more practical, technical skills. What's the sort of prevailing state of the industry in terms of getting your brand as a person across?
Well, I would say, I have this great story where there was a young lady who had interviewed for a position. She was well qualified for it, and she didn't get the job. And she went for another position and she interviewed for it and she didn't get the job. And so she ran into the potential employer in the Starbucks coffee line, and she had completely transformed her look. And so that first employer said to her, oh my goodness, hi, how are you? And she says, where are you off to? And she says, guess what? She says, I interviewed for this third position and I got the job. And she says, I realized that I wasn't dressing for the part. I realized that I wasn't putting forth my personality. And I wasn't making a mark when I walked into the door with that confidence of, yes, I'm the person for this position. And I think sometimes it's taking a step back and saying, okay, who am I? How do I want to represent myself? And then creating that image on the outside and then confidently going in to any interview, showcasing that.
Like an actor preparing for a role.
Exactly, exactly, but really being comfortable with who you are. And I think that's really key, and finding that.
I mean, you have to be prepared, and oftentimes that means constantly learning, that you can't just be preparing just for that particular job position. You have to learn for the entire industry, knowing how to express and then seek out those opportunities that improve your skills, that aren't so explicitly going down the list of job requirements. And those aren't the checkboxes that you only need to fill. There's other things that make a person be a more interesting person, and just expressing those. So one organization that I can think of that tries to connect people in that capacity is the Center for Frontline Retail. And they do a lot more kind of visual merchandising, graphics, blogging, self-selling, self-storytelling type of programs that are really helpful for people.
It's interesting, we keep going back to the storytelling portion, right?
Yeah.
How do I tell the best story of myself to take myself to the next level?
So Candice, I'd like to maybe get as personal as you're comfortable. Tell us your story. How did you enter the workforce, and how did you end up really overseeing all of this?
I started off on the sales floor.
Ta-da!
I was a selling machine, and I found that I was able to connect with people at a very basic level to sell them things that made them feel really good about themselves. And from there, I went on to be a sales manager. And then one day, in a conversation with my store manager, she had said to me, gosh, Candice, you've got this great analytical thought process, you're good with numbers and budgets, and I really think that you should step aside from the selling world a little bit and manage some operational things. And so I took her advice and I did that. So I stepped away from the sales floor and I managed at the time at Nordstrom customer service and communications. And so, my team was the people that if you called, they answered the phones. And I was also, dealing with budgets with the stores in partnership with the store manager. But my heart was always still on the sales floor level. My heart was still in the nit and gritty about actually selling a dress. And so when I was leading and managing my customer service team on a more operation side, I was always instilling in them, going back to, we need to sell that dress, right? We need to sell those shoes. We need to sell that pair of sunglasses. And so they still had instilled in them that selling aspect of them. And from there, my leader again said to me, gosh, Candice, we are, redeveloping our personal stylist and our wedding portion of our company, and we would love for you to come on board and lead that. You've got this great experience of the operation side, which what we need to launch a new business. And then you also have got those sales skills and that customer service. And so I did that, which then led me to weddings, specifically just weddings, and kind of leading a team who was driving wedding and gift registry, who was driving the sales of photography and limousines, kind of like a package thing. So I did that with David's Bridal for a little bit. Then that's when I came back to New York, which I was looking for some opportunities. And again, my stylist, or at the time, Macys by Appointment, had some openings and said, gosh, you know what, Candice, you've got these great customer service skills, you sold, and you did, personal styling at another organization. All of these things are wrapped into would make really great for my stylist. So I started on the sales floor, and it was, again, me being vocal too about what excites me to help progress me to other levels.
We can see collectively understanding the store process, understanding the retail process. How do you teach customer service?
Interesting.
It's a hard question.
Yeah, I go back to how would you want to be treated? And I go back to that simple aspect. So if you were in this situation, what would you want somebody to do for you? Or how would you want somebody to take care of you? And I think when someone answers that question, they've ultimately answered how do you give great customer service.
All right, so what we'd like to do now is to open it up a little bit to some of the questions out there.
What advice would you give to yourself at 25?
Oh my goodness, I would say stay focused and stay passionate about what you truly believe are your strengths and your goals. I would say create some partnerships that are outside of maybe your industry so that you can learn and grow a little bit about what you're good at. And I think when you make those partnerships sometimes outside of your industry, you can discover some new things.
Another question.
Hi. Annie, you had said, which I had heard before, that the average person has about 6 jobs throughout their career.
Careers.
6 careers.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's more than jobs. And it is a departure and it's a change in this younger generation. At what point do you, or maybe you can draw on your own personal experience of when you chose to make a new move or switch and have a different experience in another job, and what kind of triggered that? When do you know that it's a good time or a good opportunity, I guess?
We have to work from 9 to 5 minimally, so that's a huge swath of your time during the day. If you perceive it as, well, I have to go to work in order to make some resources in order to exist for the rest of my life, you're not going to really be driven to want to do that much interesting stuff. But if work becomes the medium through which you explore different aspects of yourself and what is interesting about the world, then I think there becomes a greater impetus to try in different careers, not because it's a burden, but because there's just too many options in the world and you want to explore them. So I think it's more of a personal choice of whatever there's a transitionary point in your life to really grasp it and not be burdened by the concept of risk and rather be driven by the concept of curiosity.
If I could add one thing, I had a great mentor say to me this phrase, and she said to me, Candice, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because when you're uncomfortable, that means that you're still got a lot to learn, and there's still some great things coming down the pike. But when you're comfortable, then you're stagnant, and that means it's time for you to make a change. So her advice to me was, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
All right. I want to thank you both for joining us this evening and for kicking off the series, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Take care.
I came here because I'm pretty early in my career and want to sort of learn what the best next steps are.
I really loved hearing about the storytelling aspect of careers and life, and really finding your story and figuring out who you are, who you want people to see you as, and really taking that and bringing it to life.
My top recommendation for building your career path in the fashion industry is really getting to know your customer, the consumer, understanding how and what they want, and then leveraging your skills and your expertise to foster that and to provide that for them.
My top recommendation about avoiding plateaus in the fashion industry is to learn about a company's culture and try and present yourself as a more holistic person rather than aim for a particular job occupation.
Dress for Success essentially suits a woman from the inside out. My top recommendation is for a woman to continue her education.